Welcome to Ajera DPE and Overhead and Reporting for Year-End Review. The following short video will walk you through the basics of calculating and implementing DPE and overhead in Ajera and the reports that are commonly used to evaluate your past year's performance. After closing the fiscal year, you may want to review the performance of that year in terms of your DPE and overhead costs. Direct personal expense, or DPE, consists of taxes and fringe benefits paid on behalf of employees. DPE includes benefits such as insurance, taxes, and 401k matches. Overhead is the percent applied to project labor costs to reflect general operating expenses. The use of overhead provides a more accurate picture of the profit on projects. Overhead includes expenses such as indirect labor, rent, and utilities. You can use DPE and overhead markups to reflect these additional costs on project reports to determine the true project profitability. This would also indicate if you need to make changes to any of your billing rates for the upcoming year. The DPE and overhead is found in the Payroll tab under Setup Company Preferences. If you use fixed percentages, then they have to be entered manually and are not automatically generated. The formula to calculate DPE and overhead can be found in the Ajera Learning Center or in the Deltek Learning Zone Self-Paced Learning for Ajera. When you calculate DPE and overhead, your numbers may be different depending on your situation. If your preferences are set to use fixed percentages and the percentages entered are zero, Ajera will not calculate burdened cost. If you decide to distribute based on costs or hours, the calculation is done by Ajera in the back end. However, you need to indicate the general ledger accounts that you want to use when it is doing the automatic calculations. It will calculate the percentages based on the actual costs or hours in the period selected. The Ajera Learning Center explains how it performs the calculations. After making the calculations, if you update the fixed percentages in company preferences, then to see the effect of the updated percentages on your burdened costs, you need to redistribute DPE and overhead. The Distribute DPE and Overhead function is found under the Setup Company menu. Enter the from and through dates for the year or period you want to review. Once you distribute DPE and overhead percentages, the burden costs in the project reports will reflect the updated percentages. If you are using departments, you need to also check the department setup to see if the DPE and overhead for any department needs to be updated. If a department setup has a 0% entered, that means it is following the percentages entered in the Company Preferences Payroll tab. Now let's take a look at the most commonly used reports in Ajera to review your previous year's performance and make plans for the future. The Project Profit Report is located under the Report menu under the submenu Project. You can use the Project Profit Report to compare the budgeted to actual values for the specific period that you choose, as well as project-to-date values. You can choose to run the Project Profit Report using the actual costs or burden cost. These options are available in the Customize button on the top right of the screen. When Include Overhead in Cost is checked, It will display the burden cost, that is the actual cost burdened with the DPE and overhead. Similarly, you can choose the profit basis that you want to run the report. Another report to look at would be the Employee Utilization Report. This is located under the Report menu under the submenu Employee. You can click on the Customize button on the top right of the report to display hours, amounts, or both. This report helps you review the target billable entered for an employee with the actual billable percentage. If the actual billable percentage is much lower than the target, you will probably want to investigate why. This could potentially be one of the factors affecting the profitability. The Cash Receipt Forecast report is located under the Report menu under the submenu Client. You can use this report as a part of your financial planning to forecast your future income. This report displays the expected cash receipts for the next 6 weeks, months, or quarters. You can choose the period basis that you want in the Customize options on the top right of the report. The AR cash receipt forecast is determined by collecting all outstanding client invoices and projecting a cash receipt date based on the client's average days to pay. In example, the average number of days it takes the client to pay an invoice based on past history. If no history is available for a client, it takes the company-wide average. In the above example, it takes Milwaukee Hospital 75 days from the date it was billed to pay an invoice. Similarly, the Work in Progress Cash Receipt Forecast tells you how long it takes for a transaction to be billed from the time it was entered as WIP. It is determined by collecting all outstanding WIP and projecting an invoice date based on how quickly a transaction is invoiced on average for the company. This concludes an overview of Ajera DPE and overhead and reporting for year-end review.